taking you through the upcoming Lower 6 progression exam, just going through the format of the paper, what you're going to be assessed on and how you should approach your revision. So I'm going to be going through Moodle with you, and also got a copy of the progression exam. Obviously the questions are not visible for obvious reasons, but this is what the paper will look like. It's on the 22nd of May, 1 p.m, an hour and 15 minutes, 55 marks, and there are two sections. Section A is on film form in US cinema from the silent era to 1990. That's basically what we started the course with back in the first term. 3 different films. Obviously you've got all the options on here. For the silent era we looked at the Gold Rush. For 1930 to 1960 we looked at Citizen Kane, and for 1961 to 1990 we looked at E.T. So don't worry about the other films, but this is how the paper will look next year when you sit your final exams. For section A there are 2 questions, question 1 and question 2, and you must answer both. Both questions are worth 10 marks. And with each question they will focus on one of these 3 films. So basically 2 of the 3 films will be assessed in section A. And for each question it will ask you to refer to a sequence from the film and consider how an aspect of film form has been used to convey meaning, has been used to create a particular effect, essentially analysing film form in relation to that sequence. So it could be a question that asks you to focus on mise-en-scène, cinematography, sound, editing or performance. So there'll be 2 questions. As I said, 2 of the 3 films will be assessed, and there'll be a different focus for each question. You'll be asked to refer to a specific sequence from each of those films, and it's a 10-mark question. Okay, so for a 10-mark question, you might be thinking, how much should I write for a 10-mark question? There's no absolute kind of desired word limit for a 10-mark question, but obviously it should be quite focused. You're probably looking at a couple of paragraphs, so possibly around 200 to 250 words in total. The most important thing is it's clearly focused on the element of film form you've been asked to consider. It's clearly focused on a particular sequence, and that fundamentally you answer the question. Okay. Now section B will be on documentary, which we've just covered in class before we did the practical. Again, you've got all of the possible films on here. The film obviously we looked at is called Stories We Tell. And for section B you've got a choice of 2 questions. Each question is worth 35 marks, so it's a more traditional essay type question, similar to the types of essays you had for Key Assessment 2 and Key Assessment 3. Now for documentary, the question will focus on the representation of reality in relation to documentary films. Okay. You might be expected to consider the different modes of documentary we looked at. Again, you'll be asked to consider film form, narrative, things like the function of voiceover, all those kind of things that are important in terms of representation of reality in documentary films. You should have also familiarised yourself with the ideas of John Grierson and D.A. Pennebaker in relation to documentary films. And really importantly for section B, you'll need to be able to refer to the film in detail. Okay, so use very specific examples to support the points you make. Okay, so that's what the paper will look like. Now, going back to Moodle, obviously not everything we've covered this year is being assessed in the progression exam. Okay. You're not, for example, going to be assessed on the Hunger Games or Ex Machina. So the kind of contemporary US British film topic we looked at earlier in the year, there was a key assessment on that, but it's not going to be assessed in the progression exam. And obviously the short filmmaking is being assessed through Key Assessment 4. So if you go to film history, you'll see section A, which is also section A in the progression exam. This explains what we focused on in terms of mise-en-scène, performance, cinematography, editing and sound. There are links here to key terminology for each of those areas. If you follow the links here, you will find key resources and activities for this topic, which were covered in class. And also we've got some extensive study guides for each of the 3 films. Okay, so there's a study guide for E.T., a study guide for Citizen Kane, and a study guide for the Gold Rush. So I strongly advise you look through those as well as your own notes and the stuff we did in class in preparing yourself for Section A. But thinking about different sequences, thinking about how you could analyse them in the different elements of film form, practicing doing short, punchy analyses of sequences with a clear focus is going to help you prepare for Section A of the progression exam. Now, if we go to critical approaches to film, obviously this is not being assessed in the progression exam, but Section B is. So with documentary, again, you've got links to the key resources. With both pages, what do I need to demonstrate for this part of the course? This section gives you an overview of the sorts of things you could be expected to discuss in the progression exam and also, of course, in the final exams next year. Okay? So it mentions Grierson and Pennebaker there, debates surrounding representation reality, specific narrative devices and film elements of film form, including modes of documentary, also some theories of spectatorship in relation to documentary films, so the ideas on preferred readings, negotiated readings, oppositional readings would also be useful for this part of the progression exam. You've got links to the film on here, same with, if I just go back to the previous section, you've also got links to the films here as well, which are on eStream. So there's plenty of material on Moodle for you to use as a focus your revision. And these pages on Moodle have essentially been written with revision in mind. Okay, so if you follow the points on here in preparing for the exam, you should be putting yourself in a very good position to do well in that exam.